Before we start today's show, we actually have a little bit of breaking news, or seemingly breaking news, on our hands. We'll get into it. I was joined by Kevin Durso today, and he's still on the line with me right now. Kevin, say what's up.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
All right, and you'll hear from him all throughout the show. We talk about it a lot, but right as we were wrapping up this show, we saw a little bit of potentially breaking news on Twitter. Kevin, why don't you tell us what Dave Isaac just tweeted?
Well, Dave Isaac tweeted out toward the very end of this, as we were putting this together, that it, and this is why I'm going to hold it to a report, because he just has, it sounds like the Flyers will have Joel Farabee tomorrow against the Vegas Golden Knights. So for Monday's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, it sounds like Joel Farabee is going to make his NHL debut, and kind of no surprise. First of all, there's two things to that. One, you have, if everybody remembers that moment that was very nicely captured as part of the Behind the Glass series, where Alain Vigneault told Joel Farabee, after the decision had been made, he was still practicing with the Flyers at that point because they were over in Europe, but he told him, keep doing what you're doing, keep bringing it, and keep fighting, and you'll be back here in no time. And sure enough, it's been about 2 weeks, and here he comes. He also does have a 4-game point streak in the AHL. He's played 4 games down there, 3 goals, 1 assist, and it sounds like I'm wondering if that also has to do with the fact that he's found a little bit of that finishing ability in the AHL on a small level. Obviously, 4 games is a small sample, but it's still something that says he's a guy who maybe can lift this offense a little bit, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he fits right in on maybe that third line where Tyler Pitlick was playing previously, and jumps right into that spot, so he's alongside of a JVR and a Scott Lawton. Maybe he does crack maybe he cracks the top 6. Who knows? I'm sure that everything's up for interpretation, as Alain Vigneault showed over the course of the early part of the season. He's willing to shuffle lines, so it would be great to see if he could find a permanent location sooner rather than later. But obviously this is a big step for him. At 19, he's proven he proved he was close to being ready in training camp. Now, I think those first few games in the AHL show he's definitely got the makings of an NHL player.
Yep, and I will actually be in attendance to see that game. Tomorrow is my birthday. We got tickets, whole 9 yards. I get to see Joel Farabee's debut, and that's kind of nice. So on that note, you can hear all our thoughts. We do talk a little bit about Joel Farabee and the roster at the end of the episode, so stick around, and here we go. Enjoy the show. We are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today is Mr. Kevin Durso. How you doing?
Doing great, Kyle.
Good. You are, in case our listeners don't know, you are our connection with Sports Talk Philly. We announced that partnership last week, and we really appreciate you guys taking a chance on us.
Absolutely.
So it was definitely nice to get that message after we put out our first show. It was definitely a nice little confidence boost. Our first show back from the break, and we got a message from you asking about a partnership. It was definitely nice. How long have you been over there?
I've been there since 2011, so going on 8 or 9 years now, and it's kind of opened doors throughout for me. I've been going to games as our Flyers beat guy since the 2014-15 season, so this is my 6th season doing that. That led to an opportunity with 97.3 ESPN as well, so I've been going for them for the last 3 years as well. So the access has been great, and it's been a lot of fun being down there, and it's cool to be able to say that I get to do this as even just a side gig, but it's still something that it's a lot of fun, and I put a lot of time behind it, and it's nice to see it keep moving forward in whatever way possible.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. We became Facebook friends, and I'm a little jealous seeing you post pictures from the press box. Back for another Flyers game. Oh, game 1 of 40. Oh, just another day at the office.
Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday about it, too, when I got up there, because it was one of their first times. I think it was their first game of the year or whatever, being down there. And they've made so many changes to the building and the press box included in that. And I'm like, yeah, this is like my 5th game of the year, including preseason, so it's like nothing for me anymore. But
right, and we did talk about it on last week's show, how you have the standing room only. They got the sports book in the arena now. There's a couple different little things that's going on over at the Wells Fargo Center, including apparently hockey. So before we get into what the Flyers have done this week, spoiler alert, it was a poor week. I'm going to let you know that you can find the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Podbean, Sports Talk Philly. Is it, by the way, I said it last week and I had never heard anything. Is it just sportstalkphilly.com?
Yes, it's just sportstalkphilly.com.
I thought so. So yeah, you can also find the show on sportstalkphilly.com, and there's also articles and content for all the Philadelphia sports teams over there. It's definitely worth checking out. So we're going to get into today's show, and the Flyers did not have their best week. We talked a lot about all the travel, and I think looking at those games in Western Canada, a 3-1 loss in Calgary Tuesday night, and then a 6-3 loss in Edmonton Wednesday night. I don't know about you, but did the team just look tired?
I think a little bit with the Calgary game, and I don't know that was necessarily an excuse because they did have 2 days off prior, and I thought that the Calgary game was their worst performance of the season so far, just in terms of it was rather lifeless. They were held to the lowest shot total they've had all year, 22 shots. I thought that was the game where they were really stymied by an opposing team. The Edmonton game I thought was a lot better. I thought they came out with much more energy, a lot of speed. They played very good, hard, aggressive forecheck like we'd seen in the first couple of games. And then as soon as Connor McDavid took over that game, uses his speed to go around Justin Braun, which is a complete mismatch, and gets the goal, it makes it 3-1. From there, it just snowballed, and the rest of the second period was a mess from there. But the first 12 minutes of the second period was really good in a 2-1 game. You're locked into it, and I thought that was one of those games where the score didn't necessarily dictate the effort. I mean, they took 52 shots in that game. A lot of them were quality shots, because we'll get into that in a little bit, I'm sure. But a lot of them were quality shots out of the 52, and they just really were unable to beat Mikko Koskinen, and that was the difference. I think again you had a goalie who performed pretty well. And as the game rolled on, I thought they were held to the outside a little bit more, hold for the 2 power play goals they got late in the game. But outside of that, I thought they were playing I thought they played much better in the Edmonton game than they did in the Calgary game. And by that point, yes, I think the travel was starting to become an issue.
Sure, you're playing your second game in a row. You're at the end of a 13,000-mile road trip over the span of 2.5 weeks or something in those lines. And sometimes a player like Connor McDavid just beats you. And you mentioned him blowing by Justin Braun. To be fair, how many defensemen in the entire NHL can keep up with Connor McDavid in that situation?
Yeah, not many. Not
a ton. I agree that Justin Braun is a mismatch. If you're at home, they're probably never on the ice together. When you have control, when you have last line change. But it turns out Connor McDavid's good at hockey, and he ended up with 4 points. He
had 5, and Leon Draisaitl had 3, and so it was just those two just went off as the game went on.
As Edmonton Oilers games tend to go.
Yeah.
They kind of live and die by that Draisaitl McDavid, and now, sniper renewed James Neal, who is back in action and making that trade look awful for the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So here we go, because Milan Lucic did absolutely nothing on Tuesday, even though, like you said, Calgary really did dominate the Flyers. The Flyers just played it was just a boring game.
Yeah, it was. I didn't
see anything.
It was a
low-energy affair.
Yeah, it was a low-energy affair, and I appreciate a head coach coming out and saying afterwards, I wasn't impressed by anything except for maybe our goaltender, because he did everything he could to keep the game close, and that was the truth. You had... For the first time all season, the Flyers were getting outshot. They were not gaining possession. They were losing those battles. And as that goes on, and you are still somehow in a game, it was 1-0 for more than half the game. It was cut down to 2-1 pretty early in the third period, and yet that push never seemed to be there. So I think that was what was disappointing, is that was a game where Calgary really let you hang around for the entire game, and you just weren't able to take advantage of that situation, and the fact that if the push that they had in Vancouver was there, then they probably would have gotten at least another point out of that game, and now you're up to 6 points in the first 4 games. That's still a pretty good total to start with, and instead it turns into a regulation loss where you feel like maybe you missed an opportunity.
Yeah, and it's one of those games. We talked about it with a couple years ago with that disastrous Nashville game with the blown challenge and the penalty and all those shenanigans. That's the kind of game early in a season, road trip early on, points on the line, that those, even just 1 or 2 points there, if you win the game in Vancouver and get that extra point, if you take Calgary to overtime and get the extra point, coming down the stretch, that can make the difference. And I know it's cliche, and we talk about it all the time where, oh, well, they'll miss those points in April, but it happens. It's a cliche because it's true.
Yeah, look, here's the thing I'll say about that, too. I thought the Vancouver game was it was a lot easier to take the loss there when you looked at how many opportunities they had. When Travis Sanheim hits the post in the final minute of the game, you're going, well, that's a game of interest thing, but the opportunity was there. He got a great chance off of the rush, takes a really good shot, beats the goalie, hits the post. Okay, I think 3 games into the year, you kind of shrug that one off. You go, all right, well, you weren't going to win all of them, so move on, play the same way in Calgary. Maybe you get a win, do the same thing against Edmonton. Maybe, you start to think that as long as it's all put together the right way, you'll be able to get the results sooner rather than later. And then the game in Calgary was just really, unfortunately, the fact that it was so boring, and so lifeless, that was a disappointment. And then to see the way that second period was going in Edmonton, you started to think about the Vancouver game again. Sure, you're not in front, you're kind of chasing it a little bit, but you're not really chasing it when you're pushing the play and you're down by a goal. You're assuming at some point something's going to break for you, and then it doesn't. And then the thing that I was so disappointed with, or the thing that kind of gets to you about that Edmonton game, is that it was 3-1 without the benefit of Edmonton having a power play, and you knew how lethal their power play was, and you're going, well, you kind of just spotted them 3 goals without the man advantage. So at some point in time, that's going to have to come into play, unless you manage to play an incredibly disciplined game. And to their credit, for the better part of 35 minutes, they did. But when you get that first one, you instantly have, everybody gets scattered. There's breakdowns. It's hard to maintain a structured penalty kill when Edmonton's able to move the puck with such speed. That was inevitable that they were going to score on one, and then they come right back with another one. They score on that one too, and next thing you know, you're looking at a 5-1 deficit, and people are tuning out by that point. I mean, I find it. Look, I do believe that at 3-1 it was going to be really hard for the Flyers to get back into that game, just with the way that all the momentum was going to shift at some point. You knew it was kind of a momentum shifting goal to begin with, even without the power plays. Let's say that there's no power plays for the rest of the second period. The score holds at 3-1, and realistically, you should still be in that game going to the third period. But
right. You're one bounce away from it at that point.
Sure, but it was still so deflating to play as well as they did for 12 minutes of the second period, and one pop fly pass that clears the neutral zone and goes to the fastest player in the league, who is obviously going to make the right move there if he gets control. That turns the game on completely. It's a complete 180, and unfortunately, that's what leads to a result like you got on Wednesday.
Yeah, and very few players in the world have that ability. Specifically on that play, very few players have the speed, the awareness to get out there, and the finishing ability to put it away. And Connor McDavid is one of the best in the world at that. And one of very few players who, the second he got that puck, you knew it was a goal. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's going in the net. That's just how this ends.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I give Carter Hart credit for admitting that he probably didn't play it the right way, going for a poke check there instead of trying to stay back. And, that's one of those goals where if McDavid's going to beat you, let him do it the way he did against Hart in Philly last February. Go in, have a guy all over you, and have him roof it on you. And there's nothing you can say other than, wow, what a goal, because this is one of those generational talents. He kind of gave himself up a little early by trying to go for the poke check. It leaves a lot of room up top, obviously. And I get what he's trying to do. Yeah, so he'll find net, and he'll be able to. It's no question that he's going to be able to lift the puck. But I didn't think, I give everybody credit for kind of admitting mistakes on that. Braun said he should have just played it to the corner instead of trying to box him out. Hart said he shouldn't have poke checked him. Well, that happens sometimes, and at least you know that it was a mistake. But it unfortunately was a really costly mistake that completely turned the game around.
Right, and while we're on the Edmonton Oilers, I do want to ask you a question. Through 8 games, did you have them at 7-1? Like, did you realistically think they would be as good as they seem to be, 10% of the way through their season?
No, not at all, and I'll tell you why. It has nothing to do with the offensive talent on the team. Hold for James Neal, who's been a really pleasant surprise for them, obviously. I didn't like that team at all defensively last year, and they returned a lot of the same players. I do give them, I certainly think they have a find in Ethan Bear, who has scored a couple times this week, not just against the Flyers, but he had another one against Washington, I believe.
Correct.
And you go through the whole process of this here, and I just remember watching last year, and Oscar Klefbom was not good, and Darnell Nurse was not good, and they were and go down the list, Chris Russell, you name it, and they're returning a lot of the same defensemen, and they're returning the same primary starting goalie too. I mean, for the most part, Koskinen's been there for most of last year. He emerged as the starter, and that's why Cam Talbot was traded, and I did not expect that much to change, honestly, because I didn't think their defensive structure was very good. And I know that there's differences. I know that they've got a new head coach. I know that they've got a few different things going differently because Mike Smith is there now. There's a lot of differences. But I also didn't expect there to be that much of a turnaround that quickly. And look, I'll say this much. Hold for the game on Wednesday where obviously nobody wants to see the Flyers fall, but it's kind of refreshing to see the players of that talent up front, to see McDavid, to see a Draisaitl helping to lead their team. I thought it was great to see that team in the playoffs and making a bit of a run a few years back, and then they completely fell out of place and had, a terrible year last year. So to see them kind of get back to that and to see McDavid be a part of what could be the start of a playoff race, it's early, but obviously, when you get off to the kind of start that they're off to, you don't end up chasing the playoffs. You put yourself in a position where you can afford to have a little slump of maybe 3 losses in a row, and you don't fall out of the race, and you get right back to it later. So they're putting themselves in a good spot to be there the longer the year goes on. Like we said, it's 8 games for them. Well, 10 games is about an eighth of your season. So if you can break it down like that, you're taking a big chunk out of your schedule and putting yourself in a position to be in the playoffs at the end of the year.
Right, and I think you're forgetting their biggest contributor, Flyers legend Brandon Manning.
I couldn't help but laugh at that. I mean, of all people, I don't know. To be quite honest, I'd have to go back and check. I don't believe he'd been in the lineup to that point.
I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you either.
It was rare, because I know that at one point in time, the idea was that he was either gonna be placed on waivers or something like that, and it wasn't look likely. He's got, from what I've got, he's got 2 games played this year, and that was his first game of the year, because he also played against Detroit a couple nights ago. So that was it. But other than that, he
and
the fact that he barely cracks the lineup, and he comes in, and of all things, he puts a shot from a distance on goal when it happens to go in.
100%. That's always how it goes down. Not just with the Flyers, with every team. When the guy comes back, he scores. That's how it goes. But back to your point about McDavid, I think it's good for the league, the NHL as a whole, to see Connor McDavid putting up 5 points and putting on an absolute show, too. He didn't just look good. He looked great. He looked like he deserves to be in the conversation for best player in the world. And I don't know about you, but I have him at 1, Crosby 2, McKinnon 3. And I think those are the default 3. People disagree about the order, but I have McDavid as the clear number 1 right now, and I don't think he's even done. I think he's still getting better. I think he still has another level to get to. And putting Leon Draisaitl on his left and, Zach Kassian on his right, and he's making Zach Kassian look like a top 6 forward, which is not something Zach Kassian has ever been in his life.
Yeah, he really is, and I go back and forth on the top players in the world right now. It's a really fine line between Crosby and McDavid at this point. It really is, and then beyond that, there's a multitude of players I could pick beyond that. McKinnon's one of them. I still think Ovechkin's toward the top. Kucherov's toward the top. There's a lot of really talented players in this league. Period. But it is good for the league. The last thing I think you want to do is have a guy. McDavid was not just another first overall pick. It was clear that he was going to be a generational talent. And he had that great rookie year that was cut short by injury, but he had a great rookie year, and then he really had a spectacular second year. And yes. And when you go beyond that, again, that was the year that I think, that Edmonton makes a bit of a playoff run. And the last thing you want to have is one of these generational talents be out there and have people talk about how he's on a team that's wasting his best years. I don't think that's good at all. And to see him now back into a situation where at least so far, they're off to a good start, and he's leading the league in points. And I don't think him leading the league in points is any surprise at all, because he's done it because he's been able to do it when he's been on a bad Edmonton team. So it's good to see him doing it for the league. It's certainly good to see him doing it in a spot where his team is performing. He's making his team better. It makes him a very, very early, possibly front runner for something like the Hart, down the line, because if you can lift that team back to the playoffs after where they were a year ago and be the main reason that everybody else around you is performing that well, then you obviously have earned the right to be at least a finalist for the award, if not the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, I think he might fall into territory where he doesn't win it just because he's the obvious choice and people don't want to vote for him. But I could easily see him winning the Hart every year for the next 4 years. He had a strong case 2 years ago when Taylor Hall ended up winning. A lot of people voted for Connor McDavid, and they didn't make the playoffs. And I think for a lot of people, that was kind of the divide. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at the Edmonton Oilers, where they are now and where they're going over the next couple of years, if they make the playoffs, Connor McDavid should win the Hart.
Yeah, no question.
Just as simple as that. As good as Leon Draisaitl is, as good as Darnell Nurse could be, or Oscar Klefbom could be, or Ethan Bear could be, as it sits right now, Connor McDavid is your most valuable player, and that's what the Hart is. And I know it sounds silly, but it just seems elementary to me that the best player in the world is the best player on his team by such a long shot that if you make the playoffs, he should win the MVP. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, and, the interesting part of this discussion, too, is, people will go back and forth over McDavid. Crosby's probably going to get a lot of, get a lot of momentum for that as well. And I think he's generating more for Pittsburgh now, too, because of the fact, with Malkin out and no Phil Kessel on the team, that's going to help fuel people who think Crosby deserves it even more this time around, because now really what do you have outside of him and maybe Jake Gensel and a couple of other guys who are filling in roles, essentially. So it changed things a lot. I mean, I do think from Pittsburgh's standpoint, I do think Chris Letang's a big part of that as well so far. But, I still think I would lean more towards McDavid because of the fact that, Crosby's been there a lot, obviously, and his team has higher expectations. Definitely had more expectations entering this season than Edmonton did. And that's not to say, Pittsburgh's expectations kind of came down a little bit with some of the guys they were missing, and, when Kessel leaves and via trade and all that stuff like that, and you have a bunch of different things, and it was kind of like the changes were starting to come through, and it was maybe it's time to start looking ahead into this time when Pittsburgh's not going to have all these guys in their prime anymore, and it might be the beginning of the end, and they're off to a good start, obviously, too, and doing it without Malkin, so I think that's impressive, too. But I think McDavid's story is even more impressive, to be the absolute leader of your team, to be able to carry all of these players, and I don't think Draisaitl is as good on a separate line from McDavid as he is with him, obviously. So it boosts his numbers. It makes him even more elite than he is. So I think that all plays a factor as well. So McDavid makes everybody better on that team. And the fact that he's off to such a hot start, and it's translated, it's not just translated to points for him, but it's translated to a winning record is a big deal.
Sure. And I've said it on this show about Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't have them in the playoffs this year, and I said it before Gino got hurt, and however long he's out, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the timeline ends up being, they're going to miss significant time with him. But as far as I'm concerned, the Pittsburgh season lives and dies with Matt Murray, because he hasn't proven to me that he can stay healthy and that he can perform at a high level for a full season. And if he misses 15 or 20 games and they're back to Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith, it doesn't matter who's up front. It's hard to get by. Like in Edmonton, it's a little bit different. Mike Smith has won a lot of games in the NHL. For some reason, they like Mikko Koskinen enough to sign him to that kind of deal. A guy like McDavid is good enough that if you get league average goaltending, you're fine. But in Pittsburgh, if Matt Murray goes down or if he's playing poorly like he has for stretches over the last couple of seasons, you don't have league average goaltending. And Crosby's good, Letang is good, but without Malkin, without Kessel providing that depth scoring, I think the Pittsburgh Penguins take a serious hit this year. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Matt Murray plays 65 games and has 12 shutouts this year. But so far, he hasn't done that. So far, he hasn't proven to me that he can stay healthy for a full season and really drive a playoff push. Like, even last year when they got in, I didn't get the impression that they were dominant coming in, and then the New York Islanders took care of them. So I do have the Penguins missing the playoffs, and if that's the case, I don't think Crosby gets the Hart for the same reason that McDavid didn't get it 2 years ago.
Yeah, I find that to be perfectly viable reasoning there, and I don't, I definitely wanted to curb my expectations of the Penguins this year too, just because, I don't think them trading Kessel is a dagger by any stretch, but I do think that they still have, Letang keeps up the play he has so far, then they do start to have a much more formidable defensive core than they did before. And Letang's
if he stays healthy.
Well, yeah, Letang's had problems staying healthy too. And I think Justin Schultz has had problems staying healthy over the years. So if you lose enough of those guys too, I just don't see how that defensive group can, who's it going to be led by beyond those two? Is Jack Johnson supposed to be the one who's going to lead this group to the playoffs? Like, I can't see that. So a lot of it, and then at that point, a lot of it does fall on Matt Murray, because then, yes, he's the last line of defense, and if he is able to stay healthy and able to continually play with some consistency to his game and be that, be the force that he has been in the playoffs a couple times through his career, then yeah, they will be a successful team. But a lot of it has to come from that back end, and I think you saw a little bit of a little taste of that when, I think the game against Vegas they just had, it's a 1-0 game throughout most of it, but when the offense isn't there and giving them, 3, 4, or more goals, because they've had 3 wins where they've scored 7 goals this year.
Right.
When you're not getting that, and that might be the product also of, in some of those games where they've had 7 goals, you got these call-ups that they are able to make where they pull guys from Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and you get, whoever heard of some of these guys before, where are you getting some of these next to no name guys? Where did this Lafferty come from? Guys like that, and that's where I think you start to think about it, where they bring these guys up, they get some production from them, and it works out. But if that production disappears and you're back to relying on, especially without Malkin, you're back to relying on Gensel and Crosby, and insert third winger here because it can kind of be anybody. There's times where, over the past at least, it's been Brian Rust, it's been, you throw in a couple different guys. And if they can't find that consistency and that balance, then I think they will struggle, because I don't think they're going to be able to play perfect hockey from a defensive standpoint. I think they're always going to be subject to giving up a couple just about every game.
Right. Now, I want to do a little experiment with you. I'm going to read off some team names. I just want you to give me like a quick little 1-sentence, description of where that team is at as a whole. All right?
Yeah.
The Columbus Blue Jackets.
Wow, that's a real tough one to start with. I'll sit there and I'll say a little bit of a mystery right now. I'm definitely not sure what they are at this point. They've had some good moments, but
probably low expectations for the season.
Yeah, and I would say that too.
Okay, how about Anaheim?
Really good start and a lot of good young players.
But again, low expectations, not really expected to be a major playoff contender. So
yeah,
fair?
definitely not expected to be a major playoff contender, but one of the things I like about them is that they have a really good goaltending tandem. That's veteran and that can help keep them in games. I think they've got, like I said, I think there's a lot of good young players, and that's something that's going to go a long way. I think that's Anaheim right now is a team that would be kind of equivalent to if the Flyers had started their year with a lot of prospects. If Joel Farabee starts here and Morgan Frost starts here, and you build beyond that, Rubtsov starts here, Ratcliffe starts here, and maybe they're not quite ready for the big stage, but they're closer than we think. And they're closer, and they'll have their mistakes, but they'll also have their really good moments, and you're going to get really excited about seeing those good moments.
Okay. How about Minnesota?
Because I want to make sure here, because I think Minnesota's, if you want, I'll give you a 1-word answer, not even a 1-sentence answer.
Okay.
Train wreck.
Yes, correct. Moving on. That's fine. How about Winnipeg?
Winnipeg is a team that I think still has high expectations and is kind of set up to disappoint in a way.
Okay.
The thing that I'll say about Winnipeg is that they still have a lot of talent, even going through everything else. They weren't going to keep Kevin Hayes, so that's why that trade went down. And everything that's surrounded Dustin Byfuglien is kind of a mystery as well. Whether he's going to come back at some point, whether he's just done for his career at this point. But they still have good talent. I think people look at the roster and see Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, and go, a lot of forward depth and a lot of guys who can score. But they really have to.
Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, Mark Scheifele too, and Matthew Perreault's another one I could throw in there too. So I just gave you a top 6, and you would think that there's a lot of scoring potential there, and that should win a lot of games. I think when you take Byfuglien out, and you take Byfuglien out, the loss of Jacob Trouba. Defensively, I think they've got a lot of holes, and at that point they need to rely on Hellebuck a lot. And I wonder how that's going to go.
And he's been good, but with a very good defensive core in front of him. How good can he be when it's all on him?
Well, and exactly, and they've got 4 wins this year, but 4 wins in 9 games is not the level that they were playing last year. You got to remember that was a team that challenged in a 3-way race that went down to the final day for the Central.
Yeah.
So, and 2 of those other teams, the interesting part is they're not that far off from those teams. They're at 8 points, and St. Louis is at 9, and Nashville's at 9, and Colorado's off to an insane start. So that's the only
Colorado's
thing that's,
nuts.
But you look at those other 2 teams, those are the 2 teams they were challenging for the division title last year, and they're within 1 point of them. So it's not like they're far off. It's a matter of sustaining the ability to keep the puck out of the net, because I think that, let's be real about Winnipeg too for a minute too, and go back to pretty much, I think it was their first game of the year, or it might have been their second. But when they played New Jersey and they fall behind 4-0, and you're going, this team doesn't look good at all. And then just like that, they're able to get 4 goals in basically about the third period. They got 1 late in the second, and then 3 more in the third. You get to overtime, you win in a shootout.
Yep.
That's, maybe you kind of fell into a lucky situation with that, because New Jersey was not looking very good early on, and that's, and I think definitely took their foot off the gas in that game and thought they had it locked up, and they didn't. So you probably took advantage of that situation, and and you look at some of the other wins too. They kind of beat Pittsburgh early in the year when Pittsburgh was not completely sharp. They've beat Minnesota. They beat Chicago. Not one of those teams really stands out. And Pittsburgh does a little bit now, but that's at a different time of the year. The other 2, nothing stands out about them that they're convincing wins by any stretch.
Right. And so far I've mentioned Columbus, Anaheim, Minnesota, Winnipeg. Two more teams on my list. Colorado. They're just a good team.
They are just a good team, and
really good.
Well, here's the thing about it too, to kind of build off of them being a good team. First of all, I loved watching them toward the end of last year as they made that push for the playoffs. They're a fun team to watch. They're a really fun team to watch. And for years, we can't say this anymore, but for years I thought Mikko Rantanen was one of the most underrated players in the league. I think people know a lot about him now.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, so that's gone now, but I've liked him from day one. McKinnon's obviously an all-world player. Landeskog is still good, and I kind of did have a few questions about their back end a little bit, defensively, but they're able to roll with some young guys, with Sam Girard and Cale Makar, and they're making it work, and I think they're getting a lot from every angle here. They're the only team in the league that still hasn't lost a game in regulation to this point. They've lost 1 game, and it was in overtime.
Right. So, it's absolutely absurd.
So if you can come out and start your season, we were just talking about getting off to a good start and talking about Edmonton being able to carve out a little bit of a margin. You have some breathing room, and their 1-loss game in regulation. Imagine playing 8 games and having points in all 8, and you started your year off on an 8-game point streak. You're
insane.
Probably on your way to making the playoffs at that point.
And 7 of them are wins. You didn't go 4-0-4. You won 7 games. You have 15 points in your first 8 games.
And not only that, but they're doing it, not the tiebreak. You have to worry about tiebreakers in their situation necessarily, but they're doing it without the benefit of having to even take it to a shootout.
Right.
7 wins in regulation or in overtime. It goes a long way moving down the road. So
we talked about the Flyers maybe missing out on a couple crucial points, and Colorado is scooping them all up.
Yeah.
They're setting themselves up for a nice, easy season. And then one more team on my list is the Dallas Stars, and we'll get a little more into them when we talk about the Flyers game from Saturday night. But just a kind of a one-sentence summary on the Dallas Stars for this season, and then I'll tell you what this list is about.
I'd say so far a disappointing season, quite honestly.
Disappointing. I think they're having trouble scoring.
Well, they're having trouble scoring, but I think this team came in with much. We talked about the other teams that we said it with Anaheim and we said it with a couple other teams in there as well. Maybe not high expectations coming in. I think that Dallas had much higher expectations. Made some fair. I mean, they're veteran additions, but they're notable additions nonetheless. When you get Joe Pavelski and Corey Perry into the lineup, and to start your year 1-7-1 is not exactly a promising start at all, obviously. But when you have a lot of things, I think Ben Bishop was an immediate talked about for the Vezina right away from the start as a possibility. And you look at some of the other guys that they have too; they were still bringing back Sagan and Ben and Radulov, and defensively, I like their defense from their they're younger and they've got a lot of good talent with Klingberg and Heiskanen, and Lindell's good, so I think all those guys really factor in. If you can have a good foundation, I don't think that they were, if I saw some people who actually thought that they were maybe a cup contender. I don't know if I would have gone that far, but I definitely thought they were a potential playoff team, and to see them get off to this kind of start, it's been a disappointment. I thought that they certainly were going to be better, and it was, it was surprising, even down to and like we said, we'll get more into Saturday as we go on with this.
In a minute, in a couple of minutes.
But I thought that, even for a game where I thought they played better, they're not generating near as much as you would think, and I was surprised by that. I was surprised that in a game where structurally I thought they were better, that they weren't able to generate more.
And they definitely have one of the more offensively gifted back ends in the league, between Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell, John Klingberg. Like the fact that Julius Honka, isn't even really playing all that much, is on his way out of town. There were trade rumors over the summer. It was a whole big thing. And 2 years ago, he was a great young defensive prospect. And they're such a gifted back end that it's definitely surprising to see them struggle this much. But we'll get into Dallas in a minute. Columbus, Anaheim, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas are the 6 teams I mentioned. Do you know what those 6 teams have in common?
Well, they're all Western Conference teams.
Columbus isn't, but yeah.
Oh, Columbus is in East. That's right. Well, they were close. I was going off of the last few, I guess.
What those 6 teams have in common, those are the 6 teams that have beaten that the Pittsburgh Penguins have beaten this year. So you have Columbus, who's not great, Anaheim, who's not great, Minnesota, Winnipeg. Anaheim and Minnesota are not great. Winnipeg and Dallas are failing to reach expectations. And then Colorado is just a very good team that they beat. But as far as I'm concerned, Colorado is the only real team they've beaten, because every other team has fairly significant problems. So this early in the schedule, they've played 9 games. They've won 6 of them. But how many playoff teams have they beaten? 2, if one of Winnipeg or Dallas gets in?
Well, yeah, and you know what? I go back to that Colorado win too, and it's an overtime win where they score a shorthanded goal that happens to go in off of a defenseman.
Where they got to bounce.
So yeah, they got to bounce, and I don't think it's very often that if you spot Colorado a power play in overtime that you're going to come out on the winning end.
No.
It's just too good. They're just too good.
No,
I think as soon as they're able to, and they're really able to double down on everything when they're able to put out McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen as their 3 forwards. And presumably either Girard or Makar is going to quarterback that at 4-on-3.
It's absurd,
and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane that they're able to do it that way, and so I think that was even more of a fluky win, because I don't think you're going to get a team like that to give up a shorthanded goal very often at all. No,
and 4-on-3 in overtime when you have 2 top 10 players in the world, McKinnon and Rantanen, probably in that discussion. The fact that Landeskog is, probably top 50 in the world. Like, you have 3 insane forwards on the ice, and then on the back end you have a very good, whether it's Girard, whether it's Makar, whoever's out there. It's absurd. And the fact that should end the game 70% of the time, but in Colorado's favor. So it was definitely interesting to see. You get a shorthanded goal, you get a little bit of a bounce. And one thing that has been missing from the Flyers season is you haven't gotten much in the way of bounces. And let's get back into that Dallas game because, I think it was a little closer than the final, the 4-1 indicates, but the Flyers didn't play a great game by any stretch.
No, they didn't. And I'll say this. It's, another one of these games where they take a lot of shots, but somewhere during the third period, and I referenced this at one point in time, is you see Ivan Provorov turn on the speed a little bit. He gets around a defender. He's cutting in on the left wing, jumping into the play, and it's a good aggressive move. But there's nothing more to it than that. He takes a shot from the left circle that's way far to the outside. Ben Bishop's going to come over and square that up easily, and the chance is over.
Right.
That was far too much of what I saw during the last half of the game. They're generating chances, and we can talk all day about the shot differential in the final period of Saturday's game, and go, well, they outshot them 18-5 or 18. It was 18-4 in the third period. It was 27-5 over the last 40 minutes.
Right.
At one point in time, Dallas had 2 shots on goal for a matter of probably about 37 minutes of game action. 2 shots on goal. One of them was in the net. And oh, by the way, during that time frame, they had also hit a post.
Right.
That looked very close to going in the net.
It certainly did, yeah.
So that's not a good rate coming back the other way, but I don't recall the Flyers having a scoring chance like that in most of the third period.
No,
at all.
There wasn't much sustained pressure. You would get a shot.
No, there wasn't.
You would get a shot. You would get a shot. But there was no. You weren't moving Ben Bishop from side to side. You weren't moving the defenseman. Dallas kind of just won the battles. At least that's how it looked to me. It looked like they were just winning every one-on-one battle. And yeah, sure, you can get a puck on net, but it's not going to be a high-quality chance. You're not going to win the battle for the rebound. We're going to get it and clear it out the center.
Yeah, and I mean, to hold the advantage in shots is one thing, but they've got to be quality. And I kept thinking about the Behind the Glass series, and that there was one. It was one of the early episodes. It wasn't the first one. It might have been the second one. And Alain Vigneault's yelling during a practice, going, "Everything's to the outside. We're getting nothing inside."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, at what point in time has that become acceptable? That everything was to the outside. There wasn't really much generated to the inside. I even went back and as I was watching some of the highlights again, just to kind of see if there was anything I saw differently. Because you see a lot from my vantage point up in the press box, you see some things that are, you see things at one angle, you watch the TV broadcast,
it looks
you see
entirely
it at a different
angle.
Right. And it looks entirely different. There was a scoring chance, and I think we all kind of thought, JVR had a really good one in the second period. It was part of I think it was tail end of a power play. It was on the power play.
Yes.
And we're like, that was a really good, it's a really good scoring chance. I went back and I watched it on TV, and it looks relatively harmless, actually.
Right.
Because it goes to the outside again, and it's not a crazy shift to the outside. That very first shift that you get from the very beginning, Claude Giroux makes a pass to Travis Konecny, kind of leads him on. I actually thought Konecny was going to take the shot there instead of trying to make a pass, and instead he goes cross ice, and there's Couturier, and they get a goal out of it right away.
Yep.
That was the kind of lateral movement you wanted to see from Bishop throughout the night. Get him moving back and forth. See if you can't take advantage of Dallas's defense, because it has been shaky.
Yes.
And see if you can't get them out of position to make a couple cross-ice passes and get some. They barely made any cross-ice passes.
Right.
And they weren't. And I mean, part of it was they weren't able to, but they barely even tried to do that.
Right. And Ben Bishop is enormous. If you let him, if you're just taking straight-on shots at him, you're not scoring. Like you have to get him moving. You have to get him in the butterfly to open up the top of the net. You can't just come in and take a shot from the circle, because he's just going to be squared up on you. And especially when you're not there to get rebounds, especially when you're not there to make him squirm. He looked comfortable. Ben Bishop never looked, I don't want to say panicked, but he never looked frantic. He never looked like he had to be moving, or I don't think he made a single spectacular save throughout the course of the game.
He didn't.
Ben Bishop didn't steal this game.
No, he didn't.
Dallas's defense didn't steal this game. The Flyers didn't generate any pressure from the inside. There were no. I don't know if I remember a single shot off a rebound.
There weren't many, if there were, and I don't. I mean, I remember seeing things that there was one shot toward the end of the game also. I think it was still late third period or mid third period. And they finally try a shot that was from a bit of a distance. And it might have even been, I think Konecny took the shot and he kind of came around the zone. He created some space, some separation, but nobody went to the net. And the shot goes in on goal. Bishop makes the save, and Couturier comes gliding across at least a second late.
Yeah.
And you're not taking his eyes enough. And when you're not taking his eyes enough, it's going to be, he's got all those all day, every day.
Right. And
you know, it's a real rarity for him to misplay a shot from a distance with his size. He's 6'6". I mean, he's going to make the saves.
Right. And if you have a JVR on the ice, if you have somebody who can get a tip there, you're in good shape. But if Sean Couturier is coming in a second late, he's not changing the puck. He's not moving Bishop's eyes. Bishop's just watching it all the way in. And it's not a recipe for goal scoring success.
No, it's not. You know, one of the things I'll say about this game also was, for the first time this year, I thought the Flyers went into the game with probably the most optimal lineup you can hold for being able to put Nolan Patrick back on the third line when he's healthy.
Right.
But I thought they actually structured the lines the way people, I think, would want to see them. Couturier centering the first line with Giroux and Konecny. Hayes on the second with Lindblom and Voracek. And then, JVR's on the third line wing. Lawton's there for now, and you can assume someone would slot in there, because I don't think Pitlick would be the guy who would last there all year. But again, things could change and you could kind of balance out. But I thought for the most part it was as optimal as it could get from the top six point of view. And I didn't see Hayes line until the second period. I don't recall much of anything from the first period. And outside of the goal on the first shift for the Couturier line, I thought they were held back pretty well and effectively as well. So, against a team that came in struggling worse than the Flyers were, and a team that came in really desperate for any form of success, that was just reeling right now.
And I think
and on a back-to-back too.
Yep,
that was another thing. They were on a back-to-back.
I think that's where they got the Flyers, and is the hunger, because the Flyers didn't look particularly hungry. And you just mentioned Tyler Pitlick probably not staying on the third line, and I agree with you. I think once you can put Scott Lawton back on the fourth line, maybe a guy like Michael Raffle, who doesn't have to take faceoffs anymore, moves up to the third line. JVR, Patrick, Raffle's not terrible. But Pitlick did play a really good game last night. Probably one of his better games so far this season. I noticed him hustling. I noticed him trying, which, I mean, I know that sounds silly, but it certainly seemed about like half your forward core kind of decided in the middle of the second period that they weren't winning the game. And to me, Tyler Pitlick was hustling. He was in on the forecheck. He was trying to get bodies on. He was trying to generate something. And he's not skilled enough to take over a game like a guy like McDavid or Crosby can. But he showed effort. And that's all you can ask out of your bottom six, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And here, I'll say this for Pitlick, because Pitlick has been one of the more impressive guys on the team so far, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think from the very first game, first of all against Chicago in the season opener, for having no preseason action whatsoever, he came out and I thought he played a really good game that night.
With a brand new team.
With a brand new team and in a new system.
Yeah.
So I thought that was all really good. He played really well against New Jersey. I thought he continued that against Vancouver. I don't think anybody really played well in the Calgary game. In the Edmonton game, I thought he was okay. I think the thing about the Edmonton game for me is, and let's all be honest about this. Does anybody remember anything about the third period from the Edmonton game?
I remember
after some point,
wanting it to be over.
Well, exactly. Like, if you hadn't kind of checked out by that point, like, you're not going to go back and sit there and go, well, gee, I think I'm going to go and try to look for some form of a positive out of this outside of the 2 goals at the end.
Not with a West Coast game. Maybe with a 7 o'clock start, but with a 9:30 start, it's running about 11:30. No, I'm going to bed.
Well, right. And I'm not even talking about in the moment. I'm talking about going back and going back and trying to see if there was anything else you could find from that beyond watching the highlights of the goals being scored.
Right.
Was there any, there's no moments there. There's no scoring chances you can point out. The way that we can point out the game in Vancouver. The game in Vancouver, we can point to a couple different moments and go, that was a really good scoring chance, or that was a really good effective play on the forecheck, or a good defensive play, and something that kept them in the game and gave them a shot and just didn't go their way. I think there were at least 5 of those moments in the Vancouver game where you sit there and go, oh, something didn't go their way, but the effort was there. They were definitely the better team, and it'll come around.
Right.
I don't. There was none of that in Calgary, and in Edmonton, by the time the third period rolled around, you don't care
You
about
were done anyway.
You don't care about the major advantage you had in shots because it doesn't matter when it was 5-1 going to the period.
Right.
You would have had. Yeah, exactly.
I'll be honest. I watched Brandon Manning score, and I went to bed. I didn't even realize. I didn't realize the game finished up 6-3 until the next morning when I woke up. And it was good for my fantasy team. I got Jake Voracek, but like in terms of watching the actual game, I was done because the team didn't look like they care. They looked tired. They looked like they had been home for 48 hours and had been in Europe for a week and a half. Mm-hmm. I get it, but it's frustrating to watch. And I just went to bed. I was like, you know what? We're good. We're not winning this game. I just watched Brandon Manning score on us. It's better for my mental health to go to bed right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was the thing that was most frustrating about this game against. I mean, taking Pitlick out of the picture here because Pitlick I did think had a good game.
Yeah,
he's definitely always moving around and really moving his feet and trying to be as aggressive as he can. And to his credit, I thought he had made some really good plays on the forecheck. Even in the third period, he was going to be able to try to generate. And I don't think that they were completely shut out from getting to those areas that we were talking about. I don't think they were completely shut out from having the ability to possibly get there. I just think that they were always a second late in the thought process. And I always love the comment about, well, they're not fast enough. Yeah, they might not have the fastest players from a physical standpoint, from actually the speed where they're moving.
I don't know. Travis Konecny's quick.
Konecny is. And Konecny's the other player I would single out of that group and go, I can't find fault with much of what he did last night.
No, he's got a little bit of a mini version of that McDavid takeover ability. Sometimes he gets the puck, streaks down the wing, and makes a play out of nothing in a way that superstars can.
Yeah, he does so many things like so many different players that I can reference. I've probably seen him make that play where he's able to carry the puck around the perimeter of the offensive zone and try to create separation. And I think about Peter Forsberg when I see that.
Yeah.
When he's getting scrappy with a guy, then I'm thinking about Brad Marchand. When he's using his speed the way that he's able to, then yes, you're thinking maybe not on the same level as McDavid because I don't think anybody can catch up with McDavid's speed. But he uses his speed effectively. But he uses his speed effectively, and I see that. There are times where he's able to take a shot, and you go, he's got the shooting ability that Matthews and Line have sometimes.
Yeah.
Because he does have a pinpoint shot, and he has a little bit of that sniper mentality every now and then. So he's got a lot of those little pieces to his game, but they all come out at different times, and it's hard for him to kind of single out one or the other. He's a good all around player in that aspect.
Right, but he can't carry 24th overall pick.
Oh, exactly. But he can't carry a team.
Right.
He definitely still needs those guys around him. And I also, as I was trying to say about the speed thing, I equate speed in this game to decision making as much as I equate it to being able to physically get to the puck and win a battle.
Yeah.
And their decision making was just a second off as well, where you might have had a shot to try to center a pass in front and maybe get a good point blank scoring chance from the slot. They didn't take any of those chances. They didn't try to make, if they were making a pass, they didn't make the pass as quickly. Even the shorthanded breakaway that Scott Lawton got during the first period. He kind of goes in with it. His back's turned to the plays, or his back is turned to the goal, so he has to make a play on the puck first, then turn in. So you're not making that play with as much speed as you would like. So it gives, and then he doesn't, because he feels rushed at that point because he didn't have the speed going in. He takes a shot from a distance that obviously Bishop is going to see the whole way and make the save on, as opposed to go in, maybe try to put a move on him, get him down. That little bit of decision making was just a second or two behind, and that just doesn't work at this level.
Now, is that, in your opinion, is that them being tired? Is that still getting used to the new system? A combination of both? Or is it just a lack of skill level? Like they don't have the talent on the roster to make that sort of decision?
I think they have the talent on the roster to make decisions like that and to make plays like that because I think you saw it 40 seconds into the game.
Right.
When you have players who can make those passes, I thought, because I thought Giroux could have ended up with the primary assist if Konecny shoots the puck on that instead of making the cross-ice pass. The cross-ice pass was there, obviously, because he got it to him and they score off of it. But I've seen that pass before where they feed to Konecny like that and go up the wing and he takes a shot and he's able to score off of it.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was what the play was designed to be. Is here comes Giroux up the middle. The defenseman's cheating a little bit there to try to somehow block a pass from him, but the lane was there, so he makes the pass. He gets it to Konecny, and then Konechny's going to have to somehow make a decision there and either choose to shoot or go across, and he does. I don't think that there's anything talent-wise that prevents them from being able to do things like that. I thought they made a few plays like that also in the win against New Jersey. They're making plays where they're able to get those kind of things happening and make things happen, but I think it comes down to a little bit of frustration. I do think that at some point in time they're gripping the sticks too hard.
Absolutely.
They're trying to make a little bit too much happen at some point in time, and or overthinking that process. Sometimes for all the shots that they have taken in the last 2 games, it's still not the simple approach necessarily. It's still not as simple as I'm just taking a shot. It's not just I'm taking a shot to take a shot. It's maybe the simple approach is taking that shot from a spot where it's the first thought that crosses your mind, and I'm gonna do it right now instead of, do I look for that pass first? No, okay, maybe I'll take the shot instead. And by that point, the lane's blocked. So, I think about that when I think about Shane Gostisbehere, a guy who I would like to see just take the one-timer right off the bat, as opposed to
looking for the perfect shot.
Well, not even looking for the perfect shot, but pose for it, then take the puck, then pause, kind of go to wind up again, and then nope, I'm just going to pass it back to the teammate who handed it to me because now I've waited too long and the shot's not there.
Right, the hesitation is brutal.
The hesitation bothers me a lot with that. And it's an area where I think that they could be much more successful if they just took the shot right away when they had the opportunity to, or maybe, it's also that split second for a pass too. That split second where maybe for just a little bit that player in the middle on a power play, the player playing the high slot, gets that separation and you have a chance to kind of hit him with a pass and get a turnaround shot on goal. You miss that opportunity when you just take that little extra second to kind of survey your options, and it's not there anymore.
Right.
And you may miss out on a good quality scoring chance, a real quality scoring chance, as opposed to what they were calling scoring chances during like the course of the third period.
Right, because we did talk earlier about the fact that, especially over the last 2 games, 52 shots in Edmonton, 39 shots against Dallas, the shot quantity is there. It's about making the right decisions and getting in the right places to get the quality shots up.
Exactly. I mean, 91 shots in 2 games to come away with only 4 goals is not good.
No,
you can't come away with 4 goals on 91 shots.
Right. And it
speaks to the quality of shots.
Right, and you didn't play Henrik Lundqvist in 2007 and Andrei Vasilevsky. You played Mikko Koskinen, and Ben Bishop's very good, but he's not an elite world-beating goalie. Like I said, Ben Bishop didn't win the game for the Dallas Stars on Saturday night.
Well, exactly. And the thing I think about with Bishop is I'd be fine if Ben Bishop goes out and makes 38 saves on 39 shots and wins a game 4-1 or 3-1 or whatever it might be.
Which he's totally capable of doing.
Because he is capable of doing it. And I'm fine with it if I'm looking, I'm going, I can count 5 to 10 scoring chances that I'm legitimately going.
Sometimes a goalie just beats you.
Where the goalie just beats you. That was the thing that was it. Now to go back, my observations I wrote for both sides for 97.3 and for Sports Talk Philly from this game, I titled it "What a Difference a Week Makes," because a week ago you watched the Vancouver game, you kind of come away feeling like a goaltender beat you. And again, not a goalie who's a world beater by any stretch. I don't think Jacob Markstrom's a high-end goalie by any stretch when you compare it to the other names that you could go to.
Sure.
But on that night, you look at the number of times you hit the post, you look at the number of times he made a really big save in tight that you thought everything's there. You're getting the traffic, you have the people positioned for a rebound. Maybe he didn't allow a rebound, and that's an impressive feat on the type of shot you're taking. All of those things, and you go, maybe a goalie just beat us this time.
Yeah,
and that's and you tip your cap and you walk away and you take your good road point because it was a good road point at that situation.
Yeah,
and you walk on to and you move on to the next city. But from there, I don't think they faced aside from Bishop. I don't think they faced David Rittich, Mikko Koskinen.
Fine,
these are guys that they're perfectly capable starting goaltenders, but you would expect to get a little bit more than what you got.
Right. When you hear the phrase league average goaltending, you think of Dave Rittich and Mikko Koskinen. And
in Rittich's case, too, that was the Flyers' lowest shot production so far.
Right.
So because it was the lowest shot production so far, I kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the defensive play, and I do think that Calgary has some good defensive players.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, first of all, you got the defending Norris champion out there. You got in Mark Giordano. You go beyond that, and there's a few other pretty good ones there. You got some other guys that you can safely rely on, and I think that that's all well and good. TJ Brody's one that comes to mind. Guys like that.
Right.
You go you go to Edmonton, and now you're taking more shots. Now out of the 52, to realistically get one goal for most of that, and then because by the time I think they scored the second goal, they were already up to 43 or 44.
Something like that.
So
yeah.
to be realistic about it and go, you had one goal on 40-something shots through most of the third period.
Something's wrong.
And whether that's a reflection of that's kind of the thing about it that I want to give the team the benefit of the doubt on, but I look at it and I go, if that's a reflection of the score being 5-1 after 2 periods, and you're kind of down and out on yourself because it snowballed, there was nothing you could do to stop it because they were on power plays. Okay, you're kind of checking out and moving on to the next one before this one's even over, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to do because there's no reason why anybody else had to watch that game sitting here at 11:30 at night going, well, this game's over. I guess I'm just going to move on. I'll go to bed
Which
now.
is exactly what I did.
Kind of thing. Right. And exactly what I didn't do because I'm obligated to,
of course,
to stay through it. But you get the point.
Right.
And the Dallas game felt so much more there for the taking with it. And it was just not good. It was just not good scoring chances.
It was much closer to the
thing about
Calgary
it.
game where you were hanging around.
Right, but I thought the biggest difference was you weren't struggling to get shots per se, and you weren't struggling to get possession. I thought Calgary locked down really well after the first period, or after the first or second period, and kept you at bay a lot more, and that's why you ended up with the lowest shot total. This shot total was different. You were still controlling the puck through most of it. You hold Dallas to 2 shots over the course of 37 minutes before they score into an empty net for their second shot of the period, which was also a goal. So their first 2 shots of the third period were both goals.
Right.
And then from there, take 2 more that were just garbage time shots that came from the outside.
For sure.
Right, low danger chances, high percentage saves, things like that. Okay, aside from helping Carter Hart's numbers get a little bit better from a game, which it wasn't going to improve much anyway because 12 of 15 is not going to be a good save percentage.
No.
It's going, the amount of possession should translate to better scoring chances, and that was the thing. The Edmonton game was so deceiving because throughout the course of some of that game, especially the second period, to be able to sit there and say, oh, high danger scoring chances were 11-4 in favor of the Flyers through that game at 5-on-5.
Right.
And you only scored 3 goals throughout the whole thing, and 2 of them were power play. Well, all right, that's one of those situations where maybe things just don't go your way, but you were generating a lot more. There was no high danger scoring chances throughout that. I think the scoring chances in the third period as a whole at 5-on-5 were 5-2 or something like that, and high danger ones were actually outnumbered 2-1.
Right.
So they actually lost that part.
They were underwhelming chances for sure.
Right. Everything was underwhelming for the rest of that game, and that's the disappointment of it. Is that I don't have any problem with Alain Vigneault saying that the process has been better in terms of generating potential offense, if you will, because yes, you've taken 91 shots over the course of 2 games. You've absolutely dominated the possession game. There's no question about that. But it's got to be more effective than a bunch of shots from the outside, no traffic, struggling to maintain control for longer than 20 seconds at a time before you have to go back and regroup, and just getting quality shots on goal. It felt way too easy of a game for Ben Bishop after that first goal that went in, and that can't happen over the course of time. And maybe the irony here is that the next game is against Vegas. They'll play a strong game against Vegas because Vegas has been off to such a great start.
Right.
They'll show up for a game where maybe they dismiss Dallas a little bit again. And everything that we could say about that Dallas game falls under the category of here we go again. Right.
And like I was about to say, I think your article title is perfect. Your article from 97.3 and sportstalkphilly.com. What a difference a week makes. Because a week ago when I sat down with Mike Senior and Dom and we recorded this show, we're talking about the Flyers being 2-0-1. We're facing some, Edmonton's not great. We can beat them. Dallas is okay. We can beat them. And we lost all 3 games, didn't get a single point. Now we're sitting here at 2-3-1. And man, I don't know if you ever sit back and read Facebook comments on Flyers posts. They're hilarious. People want Claude traded. People want Voracek traded. People want Provorov. It's the hot takes on Flyers Facebook are unbearably warm. But
I don't have to go on Facebook to do it because throughout the game I just have to keep Twitter open as I'm live tweeting during the game, and I see it. I got one yesterday throughout that was clean house and
Saturday night's game.
From Saturday's game. No joke here with this clean house. Look, I'll possibly agree with the second part of this because it says Farabee and Frost need to be on this team. Maybe so. It's good that they're building confidence in the minors, by the way, over the weekend.
Absolutely. Farabee's on fire.
First of all, Farabee's put up points in all 4 games he's played as a pro so far, including 3 straight with a goal. He did not have a goal in their game on Saturday night, but
I would have
no big
trade
deal.
him.
Yeah, well, no big deal. And, he only assisted on the game-tying goal.
Yeah.
Ended up forcing overtime, so that's not a big deal at all. And Morgan Frost goes out on Friday and has a 3-assist game and finally got his first pro goal on Saturday. So there's confidence building, and there's nothing wrong with letting them build confidence for a little more than a week or two.
Right.
I do think that, again, when I was talking about optimal lineup earlier, I think that the third line ends up benefiting when and nothing against him because I think he's been a good energy player, but when Carson Twarynski kind of comes out of that grouping and Farabee factors in,
yeah, and
if Farabee can play on the third line,
your ideal lineup
Farabee
doesn't
plays on the third line with
Stewart.
and Farabee plays alongside of Patrick when he's healthy
and JVR. It's pretty good.
And then the fourth line is Lawton, Raffle, and Pitlick.
Yeah,
and that's your optimal lineup, but. The third part of the statement on this comment was hysterical because here we go. Hart may be a little overrated.
Oh, Vey.
Wow. Okay, the guy saw 15 shots. Well, and he saw 15 shots in the game.
Well, yeah, but he let up 3 of them, so obviously he sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Well, 1 week ago we were 2-0-1. Now we're 2-3-1. A week from now, when we record next Sunday morning, the Flyers will have 3 more games in their books. Home games with Vegas and Columbus bookend a trip out to Chicago to play the nice, relaxing, 3-week homestand Chicago Blackhawks because their schedule when they got back from Europe was real tough. 7 straight home games. So, you get 4 points here. It's a pretty successful week, probably.
You would hope. I mean... It obviously starts with a test. There's no question about that.
Yeah, Vegas is a good team
test because Vegas is excellent. Vegas is, look, I'll come out and say it on this. I think I've said it before. Vegas is my pick to win the Stanley Cup this year.
I think that's a great pick.
I think they've got the best depth of any team at forward, and mind you, they're doing it without play. They're missing players too. Alex Tuck is hurt as one. There's somebody else who I'm forgetting who's out too. But beside the point, I think their depth is tremendous. To take I don't even think their the top line that they've had previously has even been their best line.
Right.
The Marchessault, Carlson, and Riley Smith line, I don't even think has been their best line, and that line's been effective. Then you get
Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty.
Max Pacioretty, Paul Stastny. The whole group is just excellent, and defensively, I don't think they have a crazy big name that's a standout defensively, but they're all good and effective. From Nate Schmidt, and Nate Schmidt's out for a while.
Oh, right. Now,
because he got hurt early in the year, so it's Shea Theodore, it's even John Merrill, who for years was a bottom pairing guy,
right,
has been an effective player, and obviously the goaltending, while relying heavily on Marc-Andre Fleury, but the goaltending's been effective. It's just been effective, and he had another shutout on Saturday too. I think it was that's his first of the year,
right?
But he if not led the league last year, I think he did. He was close to it. I think he had 9 shutouts last year.
Right. Well,
so,
the Vegas does have a back-to-back Monday and Tuesday, so it's not even a guarantee the Flyers will see Marc-Andre Fleury. They go to Chicago on Tuesday, so Vegas might save Fleury for that. I haven't heard anything about a starter.
It's not as much as it's not a guarantee. They're one of the few teams in the league that I know is not afraid to just throw him out there back to back. Yeah, there's teams that look at it and really weigh the options and do it. Dallas just did it this past weekend. Obviously, you got Ben Bishop, and Ben Bishop's probably good enough and capable of playing in back-to-back games.
Sure.
But they weren't going to force the issue, so they play Anton Hudobin again in Pittsburgh.
And also Anton Hudobin has been
they hold
excellent.
Bishop for the other one. Yeah.
Anton Hudobin being excellent allows them to give Ben Bishop a little more rest. Anton Hudobin was the best backup in the league last year for my money. Maybe Yarrow Halak in Boston, but it's close.
Yeah, and I mean, for a team that has a true starter, absolutely. I mean, obviously, what the Islanders did last year was with tandems was great, but tandems are not tandems are not the same thing.
Actually, the best backup goalie in the league was Mike McKenna. Flyers legend.
For sure.
But regardless, I I think that'll just about do it for this week. We got 3 big games coming up. Flyers definitely need to start stringing some wins together. A 3-game slide can turn ugly real quick. We've seen it before. But before we get out of here, you can find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, sportstalkphilly.com, all over Twitter. Mike's all over it. Mike_Giletto. Kevin, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. The Twitter name is Kevin_Durso. I'll spell it out for people just to be sure. DURSO.
Right.
And then again, not only follow the podcast, obviously, but follow us over at Sports Talk Philly as well. That will be a bunch of different things, really. For the Flyers coverage specifically, you can follow at Flyerdelphia. That is our in-game kind of all-access Twitter profile where we're tweeting game updates. One thing I don't like to tout too much of what I try to do, but we have one of the things I love doing is we have goal graphics for every time a goal is scored.
Yep.
And
they
it's
look
fun
gorgeous.
to use. Exactly, and it was something that was thrown together at the start of last year that took on a life of its own, I found, and so I spent all off season trying to prepare myself for it. And
yeah, they look great.
Just about finalized with everything. I just need to get a few. I actually think I did one for Tyler Pitlick the other day because I finally found a good picture of him. So the only guy I don't think I have a good picture of yet that I'm going to try to use is Chris Stewart. So that might be the only one left.
There we go. And there's probably a good couple of pictures that came out from his fight, Flyers' first fight of the season.
Yeah, there probably were.
And Flyerdelphia is Flyer, DELPHIA, spelled just how you think it would be spelled.
And then for Sports Talk Philly, you can follow us at Sports Talk PHL on Twitter. Also, definitely go ahead and check all those out on Facebook as well. The Facebook pages don't nearly get as much of the in-game type of stuff, obviously, but all the articles will go up there as well, so if that's an easier way for you to get access to it. One thing I do want to say about Sports Talk Philly really quick that's kind of a new thing for us. No, that's kind of a new thing for us anyway. We just recently had kind of a site design. Our mobile design was just not very good over the course of several years.
Now, I'll tell you that.
So from what I understand, not only is the design very good, but it does not have any glitches to it at all where it kind of cuts you off from
I haven't noticed any.
So exactly. So everything should be much better now, and allow you to read on the go, as I'm sure most of you would love to be able to do. That's probably. I mean, I know that for me, 9 times out of 10, I'm not. The only way I'm reading something when I'm sitting at a computer is if I'm on a break at work or something like that, and you get a chance to pull something up.
Right. And
otherwise, I find it through a tweet on my phone, and I'm going to hit it on my phone, and I'm going to want to read it right there.
I was just about to say
that's definitely the best way.
The mobile website looks great. If you're not reading articles, you should be following the Twitter at Sports Talk PHL, at Flyerdelphia, and at Kevin_Durso, DURSO. Don't forget to follow the podcast at YWT Podcast, and Mike at Mike_Giletto. I believe his DMs are open if you want to talk to him about guests, or if you want us to get somebody specific on. That's a great way to follow the show and let us know. And any last thoughts, Kevin, before we get out of here?
Just that it's here we go again. Kind of just a big week for the Flyers coming up with these 4 games because they do play again. They have a back-to-back over the next weekend, so this is an opportunity for them to come out and try to put to bed the thought that this is another slow start. It's turning into one very quickly, and like I had said, what a difference a week makes, because you could come out of that previous Saturday loss in Vancouver and kind of feel like, well, it was a loss, but it was a game that was there for the taking, and it was close, and you had the push. So you're in position to probably win a lot of games if you keep playing like that. And then to throw up 3 like this has not been very good.
Yeah,
so
absolutely
to follow it up, you have to have a week where you can follow it up, or for my sake anyway, it's going to make the comment feeds unbearable this year,
absolutely,
as it did last year. So I don't need to be sitting here in the middle of November or the end of November and the beginning of December arguing with people over how they are trying to do different things or how things are going to change in the front office and things like that. Like, that's not going to happen this year, obviously. They've already made their changes. This group is here
to stay, absolutely.
Here to stay and here to make things happen their way. That might be the only thing that you can kind of grab out of that, is that they're going to do it their way, whatever their way may be, and I think they're willing to give this group a chance, but I wouldn't sit and expect them to sit on this group if it's not performing for long, because I think they all know the pressures here, and I think that the pressures kind of start this week. So we've been giving out all the social media information. Follow along with me on Monday because I will be back there once again, and hopefully this time there's a bit of a better result this time.
Yep. And the Europe excuse is over. It's time to play some hockey.
Correct.
It's time to settle into the season. And in an effort to bring you this show like we do every week, Sunday at 8 p.m., next weekend we will be recording before the Islanders game. So we won't really talk too much about that game, maybe a little bit of a discussion. But we will talk about the 3 games in the meantime. And until then, we'll see you next week.